Thank you, Ambassador Mohamed Higazy and Mr. Ahmed Yusuf for coming to Institute for Cultural Diplomacy today. We're very pleased to welcome you here and thank you for taking your time out to come and talk to us. We'd like to ask you a few questions on your views on the topical issues. I know you've already touched upon it in your speech. However, could you enlighten us on what cultural diplomacy means to you personally and how you see this as a concept in easing tensions in Egypt?
Thank you very much. It's a very important question. I'm sure that out of the many definitions of cultural diplomacy, I liked very much the one that refers to the soul of the nation. It is how you transcend to others the basics of your culture and your ability of influencing, being it through your past history or your religion or your language, through your cinema, through the waves of culture inputs you have given to the international community, and through your contribution as African or as Egyptian into the world heritage, through the shaping of humanity in general, where we together, through the interaction between cultures, have built the current world we are living in. So when I was saying that cultural diplomacy is the depiction of the soul of a nation, it is true that through reflecting your culture, your religion, your language, you affect and interact with other culture. So you benefit from them and you benefit them as well. So we in Africa have a deep-rooted culture, not only in the historical sites and artifacts, but in the accumulation of knowledge we had. And now Africa being in the realm of development, in the top of the developmental interest of the world, one can say that we in the continent should use more our cultural ability, introduce not only our music and cinema, but through you young generations who made in my country 2 revolutions, who can change, who are a tool of linking our continent through the new and great image we can bring to the world. It is only through you, as students of African origin, can bring in a new image to this continent. And I think cultural diplomacy is as powerful as the conventional political and economic diplomacy, even more.
So they say, I heard a saying once, that Arabs from different nations disagree about everything. They all agree that the music of Kulthum, who's a legendary Egyptian singer, is the best music in the world. So do you think that Kulthum was a tool for cultural diplomacy amongst Arab nations in her time?
This is a very good point, and I agree with you that in our Arab world, there is different dialects, although we all speak Arabic, but cinema, for example, brought us together. Kulthum made us all love her songs, speak the same maybe language, the same dialect, I mean. At the same time, understand the same pattern of love in Egypt, in Nigeria, in Tunisia, in Saudi Arabia. It is about culture. And music, as you said, rightly, is a unifying tool. Cinema also is a unifying tool. We all saw the Battle of Algiers, as I said in my lecture, and understand the struggle of this great nation. We saw the Egyptian cinema and TV series, how it unified, and the Lebanese media, deep in history. I studied media myself, where Lebanese teachers and resource of knowledge came from Levant, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq. Of course, the civilized references made to our continent is related in many ways of the places like Iraq, like Syria, like Egypt, like Southern Africa or West Africa, or East Africa, where many truly center of knowledge, even in Central Africa, in Timbuktu and in many other centers, in Zanzibar as well, in East Africa. There is truly many center of knowledge in Africa that we need to revive, and we need to be very proud of. Unless you are very proud of your culture, you cannot progress. It is your ID. It is how you can present yourself as maybe German of an African origin, or a British of an Iraqi origin. You should be very proud of your culture, because this culture is your way to defend yourself also, and to introduce something new to the new society you are integrated in.
You mentioned Egyptian cinema. I saw an Egyptian movie recently. It was called The Cross and the Crescent. Have you seen it?
I did, yes.
Yeah, so this was a movie that was promoting essentially brotherhood and coexistence between Muslims and Christians. It was a really nice film. Do you think, can you tell us a bit more about Egyptian cinema in general, and how it's helping to promote these values?
Thank you very much for mentioning this particular film, because cinema can be a tool also to harness and to develop relations between different religions and different culture. And as I said, we have many centers of cinemas, like Nigeria, like Morocco, like in Egypt, and in Senegal, in Burkina Faso. We have many also ceremonies or festivals that we have to empower. Cinema is a tool to educate, to protect rights, and to introduce new values. If it is, as you mentioned, a cinema of certain orientation, not just to an entertainment. It is an entertainment tool, but it can be used to help our development process. So your two questions, music and cinema, is among the most important parts of our culture. Our music in Africa, in this very important part of the continent, North Africa, East Africa, has its own culture. We have to introduce Africa through different means to the international community. Not a continent of poverty only. It's a continent that is struggling to develop itself. It is a continent that is struggling to regain its ID. That's why I recommend my young colleagues, the youth of Africa who comes to benefit from the knowledge in the West, to come back to their continent, not to stay. Unless we help our continent up, unless we bring back the knowledge we acquired from the Western universities, we will not be able to develop ourselves. Of course, there is another is to develop our own universities and to invite international teachers and professors to help us more, but education is important, and it is both way. Culture diplomacy, it's a both way flow. It's not about the West coming to Africa, but Africa also, as you are here in Berlin. Your point about cinema is important. We have very important cinema centers in our continent. We have many universities. I myself studied in Nairobi University for 2 years. I did an international development program in Nairobi, and it was very important to me because that was the base according which I completed my studies in Australia. So we have in Africa many centers of excellence that we should enhance. Our education, our universities should be improved. And I'm sure, as you said, cinema, music, art, sports are very important tools in our hand. And above all, our belief in our ID and in ourselves, in our culture. Unless you have a strong belief in your roots and in your culture, you will be melted in any society because you are weak. So we need to strengthen also our attachment to our culture. Even if we are to live in the West, we can be ambassadors, permanent ambassadors. You can represent your country, and the others will respect you more if you have a belief and a protection to your ID, and they will not force you to change unless you are very weak.
I mean, you keep highlighting how much knowledge and culture Africa has. I love the way you described, it as the ruh, the soul of African states. How do you think that maybe we can spread this to the West, like to Europe? Because I feel like African states should have more responsibility to show the rest of the world how much we have. Do you think that maybe there are different ways in which we could do this?
We already did that. I'm not talking only about African music and African stars, but take any aspect of our development, or even cultural diplomacy, take the sports. We have seen the World Cup in Brazil, right? But we have seen a similar success in South Africa a few years back. So we are able, and this is very important notion, we are able, you as youth, you are here integrated in a German important institute, and you are delivering. You are standing with your colleagues from different parts of the world, from different continents, and you are very able to talk, to discuss, to host me in this very nice and candid show, to talk in a very clear and developed ideas. And for that, I have a belief in the continent. And you name it, we have human resources, we have underground resources, we have minerals and oil and gas, we have variable agricultural resources. We need just to focus on what develop us. The question that I was asked, remember, in the lecture about relations with Ethiopia vis-a-vis the wish of Ethiopia to develop its water resources, I said that there is a room for us all to develop our resources and to gain benefit for the integrated plan of the River Nile Basin. This is the notion that we have. First, to reduce conflicts and also to trust our youth. I think it is very important to trust our youth, to trust the change in the continent. We in Egypt, when I am asking also your question about what can we in Africa introduce to the international world, I am part of two revolutions. I came from a country that in 3 years' time voted for democracy, freedom, and social justice. And when the orientation was to create a religious state is not part of the manifesto of this revolution, we revolted again. So Africa is vibrant, and as I mentioned, we saw Brazil's success in the World Cup, but we saw it also in Africa years back. And if you go to Senegal, you will attend a university in Nairobi. And if you go to North Africa, you will see a lot of what you are amazed to see in the West, and it is in your continent.
Regarding the political landscape in Egypt, many African countries have been marked by leaders who were not willing to give up their position, even though the people would like them to do so. How has Egypt, after the fall of both Morsi and Mubarak, how has Egypt made sure to change the chapter on its own history and lead the forefront to democratization in the region?
This is a very important question. Thank you very much. It is clear that when people decide, no ruler can prevent this decision from happening. In our country, as I said, we revolted for three main goals. In 2011, we said democracy, freedom, and social justice. When a president wanted to hijack the goals of the revolution and establish a religious state, people revolted again. So people are the custodian and the guardians of the future. They are the one who will defend themselves and defend their cause. So in my country, it is about a popular movement that is still in the street, and they are monitoring and giving chance to each president that come. When we ousted Mubarak and Morsi came, and he wanted to move into his agenda of a religious state, changing the constitution and confronting the moral and liberal values of the Egyptian society. People revolted again. So we are always monitoring our leaders in Africa, and that can also be applied to many parts of the continent. We're monitoring our leaders because we are seeking stability. We want our political experience to succeed. And if it is to be followed according to the rule of the people, according to the wish of the revolution and its basic goals, then we respect our rulers because we seek stability and law and order and a state of law.
Okay.
And Mubarak, sorry, and Mubarak was in power for quite a long time before he was ousted. Obviously now we're seeing that, as you said, the population's run out of patience and they're prepared to oust a leader who won't represent them adequately. I was wondering, have any steps been taken to put in basically checks and accountability to prevent another dictatorship that doesn't depend on the threat of another revolution or riots?
The most important is that any revolution that is in the streets and in the squares move from the state of revolution into an institution. And this is exactly what we did in Egypt, to make sure that the values of the revolution is incorporated in a particular document, which is the basic document, which is the constitution. We established a constitution that contains all these hopes and dreams and principles into one constitution. A liberal, civilian, not religious, not military. It is a constitution that represents all Egyptians and through which everybody will see himself. The religion is respected, but it is not the dominant factor. And through the liberal values that is embodied in this constitution, the laws will come through the judiciary and the legislative body, which is the parliament. And by that, we transform the constitution and the revolution into an institution. And by that, we can refer to any ruler by respecting or disobeying or disrespect the constitution. So I think what is important is that after you do the change, you make sure that those changes and goals and dreams and hopes are incorporated into a body language represented in a document, which is the basic document, the Constitution. And any ruler should follow the Constitution. And any legislative body, a parliament, should apply those principles into law. And by that, you make a good outcome of your revolution, and you make your ruler respect a particular notion.
And how do you think the current issues in Egypt has impacted on its tourism industry, and how can this industry be revived?
Indeed, tourism is a very important tool of development, and after 3 years of upheavals and 2 important changes, 2 revolutions, tourism was affected, particularly in the Western important market like this of Germany. They were travel advisory. Happily, Germany have softened the travel advisory to certain places in Egypt, where now we can see more German tourism back. Tourism is an industry that is very sensitive in nature. So it might get weakened, but it never dies. We always maintained a level of German tourism, Arab tourism, Russian tourism, all over, but in a very limited numbers. But since the last year, I think we are getting the previous figures that we used to get in 2010. Not yet there, but we are heading for that, and we are promoting Egypt as a stable anchor in the Middle East. And as you may have discussed with me upstairs about Egypt as an anchor for stability and a tool to promote peace between nations. We are hosting, as you say, as you said today, the peace negotiation between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Hopefully, after the tragedy in Gaza, we can find our way through to a much more stabilized Middle East where we can all live in side by side. So this is a hope that I'm sure many countries are sharing. Tourism will come back as a leading industry in our economy because Egypt is an unreplaceable destination. You cannot see the pyramids anywhere but in Egypt. You cannot enjoy such a wonderful wealth of knowledge of history without coming through to my country. So I think it will come back, and I hope it will come with strength. And I think tourism is very important to our continent. Of course, it's part of the many development Africa is seeing. As I said, I studied in Nairobi, and you can travel around and see. I went to Tanzania also, and you can see the beauty of East Africa. I attended maybe many conferences in Addis Ababa, and I traveled around. Africa is beautiful, and tourism can be a tool of development, and I'm sure that if we gave tourism as an industry the attention required and the training of the youngsters who work in the field, we can definitely make tourism one of Africa's most lucrative industries.
Thank you very much for coming to meet with us today, and I hope to see you back here at the ICB. Thank you very much.
And I wish to also thank you and to invite you, if you have time, to my embassy to interact more and to welcome you in a reception or any form of gathering. And I'm very proud of being here, and very proud of you as young African and Arab origin diplomats, I have to say, who represent their continent and their country in Europe. Thank you.
you.